And I wanted to remind you that we're on chapter 10.3 today, entitled The God of Sickness. And this, I think, requires a few comments before we begin reading. I could have done this at the end of the reading, but I think it might make it more useful to go over these comments at the beginning of the reading. So, because the God of sickness is not a topic that is used, that label is not used widely outside of Course in Miracles, but you'll recognize the concept when we get into it. So there's a principle in A Course in Miracles that says when your mind makes an error in judgment, you save that in your memory. That becomes, that judgment, that error stays with you until you recognize it and correct it and change your mind. Once a judgment is made, it stays in place until you decide to change it. Well, so question then becomes, what is the God of sickness? And what are the sons of God in sickness? And we'll read that. That's what we will read about today. It has to do with the most important existential issue, which is the way you regard yourself. And it turns out that the nature of the ego's religion is to cause you not to value yourself, to devalue yourself. And when you don't value yourself, Course says your mind becomes sick. You become alienated towards your own self. And this is an error, but to believe this means that you believe self-hatred, attacking yourself, is an effective form of punishment. It's if this sounds crazy, it is. To be in hatred of God's creation. And all this stems from the ego's judgment of you. And so it can result in a lifetime of attacking yourself. Remember, we read in the previous section, all attack is self-attack. And when you attack yourself, it's a sure sign that you hate, we're going to use a strong word, hate what you think you are. And so what's being attacked really is not your true self. It's the image the ego has made of what you think you are. And so this is the God of sickness. It's an illusion made to replace your idea of God. It becomes an idol or a demigod of sickness that is referred to again and again and again. And so we need to learn how to free ourselves of this. When it speaks to you, when the God of sickness, self-hatred, self-devaluing speaks to you, remember that you will hear whatever God you listen to. Whatever one you choose to listen to is the one you will hear. When you listen to the God of sickness, it is an illusion and it will pass. And it can be unmade for you or undone the instant you decide you're willing to accept only the eternal for yourself. Another way of saying that is when you decide that you want truth, not this error, then your mind can begin to correct from focusing on the God of sickness to focusing on the truth. So this is the phenomena to which we are faced and which we'll read about today. Sandra?
Yeah, what that looks like for me is I'm more holistic, and I frequently use the word holistic for holy, but I'm no more holy than anybody else, but I just follow a more holistic way of healing. And the reason I do that is because I believe in the body's innate ability to heal itself. I believe that the God within the body can heal itself. And so I use a more natural way of doing it. It's which is still, it still can be what's the word I'm thinking of? Magic, because I'm still using plants and things like that. But it's my belief in my innate ability to heal that is really what's the difference between me going to big pharma or to a doctor. Which I will do if I can't, if my body is not cooperating with me, and that's usually because of a belief system. Because I do think that the body, if I take away all the blocks, which is my thinking, can absolutely regenerate and heal itself. So that's just the thinking behind why the body would heal. Does that make sense to anybody?
Well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Sandra. Noel?
Complementary lesson is 136. Sickness is a defense against the truth.
Yes.
So that goes with what you're saying here, that it's all belief, it's all what we put our faith in. And in that lesson, 136, he also talks about when we're thinking the right way, the neutrality of the body, how it shouldn't feel this way or that way, but just be there and be the vehicle of the purpose that we've been assigned.
Right, right. Very good. Thank you. So we'll move into our reading today. Thank you, Brother David, for being our reader today.
You have not attacked God, and you do love him. Can you change your reality? No one can will to destroy himself. When you think you are attacking yourself, it is a sure sign that you hate what you think you are. And this, and only this, can be attacked by you. What you think you are can be very hateful. And what this strange image makes you do can be very destructive. Yet the destruction is no more real than the image, although those who make idols do worship them. The idols are nothing, but their worshipers are the sons of God in sickness. God would have them released from their sickness and return to his mind. He will not limit your power to help them because he has given it to you. Do not be afraid of it because it is your salvation.
So I'm sure people have a sense for this, but I was going to share a personal story of how this showed up in my life before I was age 10. A sure sign you hate what you think you are. And the context I remember is that I was starting to explore various forms of art, producing art. I was about 8 years old. And when I showed them to my father, he was highly critical of them. He pointed out all the flaws to it. And I took that very personal. And for many years, perhaps a decade, I continued to use his words, his criticism, and repeat them to myself in a form of self-attack. he had said them 10 years earlier and not really, it hadn't come up again. But I continued to attack myself, although I attributed the words to him. It was really me repeating. I took his judgment in, his criticism, and made it my own, and then kept repeating that again and again and again. And I submit that this has probably happened to other people as well in their own form, and you're with different sources, different story, but the content is the same. And so it's a form, it's a perfect ego mechanism of perpetuating a false self concept and being highly critical of it. It goes from suspicious to vicious. And then behaviors result from that belief, which are anything but positive. So it's not our true self to which we hate. It's the image that we've made of ourselves, what we think we are, that we hate. This is central to the God of sickness. And as unpleasant as it may be to talk about these things, we have to identify this. These things find a corner in our subconscious mind and often go unconsciously. We have to bring them out into the light where we can see them in order to evaluate their truthfulness and then choose again. That's why we do this in the service of healing. Susie?
This line really jumped out at me this time. The idols are nothing, but their worshipers are the son of gods in sickness. So, you know, through my life, I might say, oh my God, shopping is a problem, or food is a problem, or whatever my idol is. It's not the idol. It's me in my thought system, because the idols just slip away when I'm healthy and healed. And so that just really, you know, there again, it's the responsibility of I need to take a complete responsibility for what's in my mind and not, you know, blame anybody else. And, you know, I just want to say this after my lesson this morning and during my meditation, it came into my mind that, you know, I just enable my ego. Like I enable any other family member in a disease. Like it just came to me like I'm enabling my ego. I'm like enabling that part of me when I give into sickness or that. Like it just hit me it was like an aha moment for me. Oh, you know, and who is doing that? The ego me. And so the more I enable my ego, the more it's going to be active. So I don't know, it was just a different way of looking at it for me, and it really helped me a lot. So anyway, I wanted to share that.
Thank you. I really appreciate your putting that out there. So this enabling of your ego may have gone on for many years without you recognizing it as such. And healing is the process of recognizing there's this enabling going on. There's these ego limits and prison, and then we're going to bring it out into conversation, make it conscious, and then judge it once again, this time with the Holy Spirit being the judge. This is what freedom in A Course in Miracles is, exactly that process. Taking old messages that we were not fully aware of, bringing them out into the light of the Holy Spirit, letting her judge them again, and then we choose willingly to let go of those old messages, and that's how we become free. Sandra?
Yeah, in the Course, it says there is no gain to me at all in this. And those are the words I use. There is no gain to me at all in any further diagnosis whatsoever.
Right.
Why? Because I am a divine being. I am the created, but I am also the creator. I'm complete.
Mhm. So true. Okay, we'll go on.
What comforter can there be for the sick children of God except his power through you? Remember that it does not matter where in the sonship he is accepted. He is always accepted for all. And when your mind receives him, the remembrance of him awakens throughout the sonship. Heal your brothers simply by accepting God for them. Your minds are not separate, and God has only one channel for healing because he has but one son. God's remaining communication link with all his children joins them together and them to him. To be aware of this is to heal them, because it is the awareness that no one is separate, and so no one is sick.
There's a very transcendent idea here that cannot be understood or appreciated from the point of view of the ego that all our minds are separate, but can be easily understood from the point of view of Holy Spirit, that our minds are all interconnected. Here it's called God's communication link with all his children, joins them together. And this idea is that when healing is received by one, it benefits everyone. All our minds are interconnected. What he accepts for one is accepted for all. And when your mind receives the illumination of spirit, the remembrance of spirit awakens throughout the entire sonship. This sounds crazy from the ego's point of view. This makes perfect sense from the Holy Spirit's point of view. So, how can we help others to heal? Simply by accepting God for them. It's a recognition and trust and faith in the God within another person, despite the present appearances. It's a trust in that spirit will prevail, although it may not be obvious in time at the moment. And it's so realize that when one heals, it lifts the entire sonship up. It's a process that, again, we are interconnected through this communication link. Let's go on.
To believe that a son of God can be sick is to believe that part of God can suffer. Love cannot suffer because it cannot attack. The remembrance of love, therefore, brings invulnerability with it. Do not side with sickness in the presence of a son of God, even if he believes in it. For your acceptance of God in him acknowledges the love of God he has forgotten. Your recognition of him as part of God reminds him of the truth about himself, which he is denying. Would you strengthen his denial of God and thus lose sight of yourself? Or would you remind him of his wholeness and remember your creator with him?
So this is a big undoing. In many years past, outside of A Course of Miracles, I believed that I was empathizing with someone when they told me about all their problems, and I would feel their pain and share their pain. I thought that was opening my heart to them. I thought it was helpful to them. What A Course says is you're affirming their sickness in your own mind and in their mind, and that we should not side with sickness in the presence of a Son of God. This is the undoing. Even if the other believes it, instead, it recommends that we acknowledge the light and the power to heal within them. The acceptance of God in them acknowledges the love of God that the other person has forgotten. And so a good example of this comes when that I experienced when tutoring children who are by definition learning and in need of help in learning. And when they made mistakes, I would side with the part of them that was capable of learning to get it right, not focus on the part of them that was mistaken. So, and by believing in another person, it changes that person's faith and confidence about themselves so that they can learn. The same is true here in spirit, is that when another believes himself to be self-hatred overtakes them, our task as healers is to recognize the light and the power to heal within them, so that we strengthen the presence of God within them, not their denial of God. Noel?
There's a well-known academic study by people named Rosenthal and Jacobson. Sounds like a comedy team, I know, but they're both teachers, and they did an experiment with their students. Janica, you sounds like you know this.
I have. Go ahead.
And it's an experiment in the teacher's belief in the students, raising them up. They call it self-fulfilling prophecy, but it also has elements of quantum theory. As you project your belief about someone else, in this case, the children rose to the occasion, and they have all kinds of statistical proof, how they improved on tests and everything. And since then, people have also tried to discredit it, but that's not my point. My point is that, like what you said with the children, and we can do it with anyone, as we project our good belief about them, our conviction, our recognition that they are a son of God fully also, they respond.
They certainly do. It's a law of mind. Very good. Betsy, did you have a comment or a question?
Sandra, I think, just answered it for me. I was questioning, like, how do we actually do that for somebody?
Yes, it's by believing in them, holding to the light.
Okay.
Sandra?
For me, my holistic perspective, and what makes me whole is my relationship with God. That's what makes me holy, is that there is no sickness. There is imbalance. There can be imbalance. So if I see somebody who's sick, I don't identify it as sickness. I just identify it as an imbalance. And that can be an imbalance either on the physical level or an imbalance on the emotional level or the spiritual level.
Right. You're reframing it. Uh-huh. All right, we'll go on.
To believe a son of God is sick is to worship the same idol he does. God created love, not idolatry. All forms of idolatry are caricatures of creation, taught by sick minds too divided to know that creation shares power and never usurps it. Sickness is idolatry because it is the belief that power can be taken from you. Yet this is impossible because you are part of God, who is all power. A sick God must be an idol made in the image of what its maker thinks he is. And that is exactly what the ego does perceive in a son of God. A sick God, self-created, self-sufficient, very vicious, and very vulnerable. Is this the idol you would worship? Is this the image you would be vigilant to save? Are you really afraid of losing this?
Well, the aspect that I'd bring your attention here has to do with power. And we know previously that God has given our minds the power to change our mind, the power to heal, the power to forgive. But all that can also be used unwisely, and we can give our power away to illusions in an effort to make them real. And so sickness is the belief that your power can be taken from you by external factors. It's a lack of confidence. It's a mistake regarding the nature of creation's power. So in truth, it's impossible that the power that God gave you can be taken away. And so always the thread that we find here was mentioned earlier. It's about a sense of responsibility and the recognition for the power that we have, and then training our minds to use it wisely. Susie?
I have a question, Jonica. In the example you gave a couple of paragraphs ago, you said when somebody came to you with a problem, you would empathize. So I have a practical question because we live in this world. So if somebody comes to me that is grief-stricken, or, you know, something has occurred in their life in this world, what does a healer or a miracle worker do or say in that case? I know in my mind I would be blessing that person and sending them peace and love and light and all of that, but with my words, I feel like I do have to empathize. I would want to empathize, if that's the right word, or acknowledge their, okay, pain, I guess is not going to be, acknowledge their feelings in this world. So what does that look like for you?
So I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers here.
No, I understand. I'm just saying,
but you're getting to it. It's a difference between taking on their pain and feeling it with them, so that now I'm feeling pain. But it's also, you use the idea of to acknowledge and to be aware of their fragility at the moment. So we're not coming in there with both guns a-blazing of spiritual, oh, Course of Miracles says that all healing, is inevitable. So it's really, Susie, it is this paradox of recognizing that this person is in a temporary state where they may not be, where they are feeling very vulnerable at the moment, but that this too shall pass. This does not define them. This does not change their nature. This does not withdraw their power from them, although they might not be aware of it at the moment. So there is a sensitivity to where the other person is at. I should say that guided by the Holy Spirit, a miracle worker is aware of the perception of others. Doesn't mean that they believe it, but they're aware of it, and they speak and share and communicate in a language that the other person can receive at that time.
Mhm.
And so, yes, especially in grief work, you have to, the only way you can be effective there is just to be present and show up and let the other person know that you care and you love them, but not get lost in those feelings which are transitory.
Right, like I used to. I get it completely. Thank you. That was
Yeah.
helpful.
Remember, the sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept atonement for himself. The only way you can be of a healing presence is to be centered yourself. But we will more and more as we go into the relationship aspects of miracles, focus on and talk about the awareness of the perception of the other and what they are capable of receiving at that moment.
It's very interesting. It brings up the same thing. Do I respond with my ego and the enabling and the identification and oh my goodness, or do I respond with the Holy Spirit, asking the Holy Spirit, how do I respond in this moment? So it's two very different ways. Got it. Thank you.
It really is. And just one more footnote on that to affirm what you're saying. It's if we respond to an ego, it's like we have a script that's already written. We're just going to repeat back to them what we've already learned elsewhere, that there's always hope, there's always healing, blah, 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 blah. Well, it all sounds really nice, but that's not guidance from the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit feels like, there's a ego restraint, call it little self-restraint, so that we might tune in to the guidance of Holy Spirit in the moment, and what is said or how one relates is unknown until that moment. And that's true guidance. It in fact, you're no longer in control. You are relinquishing direction and guide to the Holy Spirit to guide. So we will talk about that some more. It was a really good question, Susie. Noelle?
In response, the other day I was with a friend whose husband is on his last physical legs. And first of all, I knew she needed to talk. So I was just there listening. And then I did ask for help quickly in my mind. And what came was to tell her how wonderful a job she's doing by just being there for him. Right. And overseeing all the help that's necessary. And to tell her that I thought she was incredible and appreciate her. So in other words, bolster her so that she feels better about herself. I also was led to say, do good things for yourself, get away every so often, you know, on the practical level, as Susie was saying, in this world, on the practical level, she needs a few breaks, you know, and so she said, yes, I've been going out, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, as you said, Jonica, it's always listening, listening, listening. And I have kept praying for the husband to know that he's at one, and you know, there's nothing physically I can do, but at least I can be there for her. And to me, that's a good way of looking towards people and helping them as I can.
Indeed. Thank you, Noel, for sharing that.
I think it's very important to recognize, from my interpretation of what we're talking about, is that there's a very distinct difference between the levels of sickness that we're talking about here.
Yes.
We're not talking about body sickness. We are not talking about sickness in this world, this physical plane world. We're talking about spiritual sickness here. And you can be very spiritually fit and very physically sick. I think it's important to recognize that.
It is indeed.
Look calmly at the logical conclusion of the ego's thought system and judge whether its offering is really what you want, for this is what it offers you. To obtain this, you are willing to attack the divinity of your brothers and thus lose sight of yours. And you are willing to keep it hidden, to protect an idol you think will save you from the dangers for which it stands, but which do not exist.
So it might, you know, what do they mean? What are they talking about? Willing to attack the divinity of your brothers? Well, when we view our brother as incapable, as truly sick spiritually, we are attacking the divinity of our brothers. In truth, the light that is given, the gift that is given us by the Creator is always healthy, is always pure, and is always perfect. Sickness is an illusion, not a reality. Spiritual sickness that David was talking about is an illusion. It's not the truth. The spiritual sickness is the ego's gospel, not the message the Holy Spirit would convey. And so, if we believe another brother is spiritually sick, we are in fact undermining the truth of their spiritual power. We are in fact making the same mistake by being willing to attack the divinity of our brothers. So this can go on unconsciously, and this is part of the mind training so that you can both heal yourself and be helpful with others healing, is to recognize that we must remain faithful and trusting of the power of God that is within us to keep us all safe and invulnerable. Just going to move on here. We'll take a comment after this next slide.
There are no idolaters in the kingdom, but there is great appreciation for everything that God created because of the calm knowledge that each one is part of him. God's Son knows no idols, but he does know his Father. Health in this world is the counterpart of value in heaven. It is not my merit that I contribute to you, but my love, for you do not value yourself. When you do not value yourself, you become sick. but my value of you can heal you, because the value of God's Son is one. When I said, my peace I give unto you, I meant it. Peace comes from God through me to you. It is for you, although you may not ask for it.
So we should review really quick the levels again, because so that we understand sickness in that context. So the three major levels are the physical level, the mind level, and the level of pure spirit. And no one would question that pure spirit given to you by God remains forever healthy and whole and complete. And no one also questions that biological systems, I'm talking about flesh and blood, has its ups and downs and its vulnerabilities, and eventually comes to an end in time. The area that the course is concerned about is your mind. And so when you do not value yourself, when your attitude towards yourself is one of lack of recognition of your inner divinity, then your mind becomes sick, meaning it's out of balance. It doesn't know which end is up. It has forgotten its relationship with spirit, and instead is lost a sense of proportion and does not no longer values your true identity. And so this confusion in the levels, so I want to tweak David's words a little bit, although I agree with him in spirit or in intent. Rather than call it spiritual sickness, it's really mental sickness regarding whether I'm a spirit or a piece of flesh. It's a mental confusion, and the Course in Miracles says when we heal our minds and restore the relationship between our mind and spirit, then the power to do anything is unleashed, and other problems are easily resolved then, because the mind has ceased to attack itself and aligned itself again with spirit, which is a source of all true power. Sandra?
This is so great that we're discussing this now, because our lessons are on I am not a body. I am free. I
Yes.
am as God created me, which I say pretty much daily. It's a mantra for me. I am as God created me. So the ego has judged sickness, and that's part of the problem. When I'm identified with the body, which is with the ego, I'm judging sickness as being bad. And I don't believe that it's bad. I believe that it's just trying to tell me that there's an imbalance, either physically or spiritually. That's it. It's neutral. I'm complete. And I'm not a body anyway. so it's just like, again, it's an identity issue.
It's very much an identity issue. And it comes down, I'm thinking of Betsy here. Betsy, it comes down to when any person uses the word me or I, it comes down to, what are we talking about? Who am I? Are we talking about my flesh, my tissues? Are we talking about my mind, which is still obviously trying to figure out which end is up? Or are we talking about my spirit, which is in a state of grace forever? So it is very much an identity issue, and that confusion between whether I am body, mind, or spirit is the basis for all confusion and all conflict. When we resolve that one issue, then we can begin again with a solid foundation of truth, realizing that we are in fact pure spirit. Then all the thoughts that flow outward from pure spirit, we can trust, we can believe in. Susie?
This is a issue I have because I do have like physically, I have a chronic disease.
Mhm.
And so when you say sickness, I automatically go to that.
Right.
But I also know it's, a mental thing as well. So this is where the rubber meets the road for me because yeah.
Yeah, truly. And we all go through this process of what we thought was preeminent or of primary importance in our life, what we thought was real. In the Course of Miracles, it's an identity process, confusion. We come to question what we formerly thought was real, and we find as we let it go, we become free. And once again, we start to trust and believe in the power of spirit. So Betsy, we are all in those shoes in one form or another. Noel?
You called on me.
What? Oh, go ahead. Whoever wants to.
I just wanted to share a tool that I use sometimes that I have found really helpful after learning about the ego. Like, who is telling me this?
Yes.
If I have a thought in my mind, who told me that? Is it causes and conditions and the way I was domesticated and my parents, just like you were saying, do I hear who told me this and who is doing this and who is walking into Bloomingdale's and who is going to the refrigerator? Who's telling me anything? Is it spirit or is it my ego? And it's really definitive. It really is black and white, true and false, like the Course says. If I'm willing to go there and ask myself there's the big caveat. If I'm willing, and it's like, am I enabling my ego by saying, oh no, I'm hungry. I don't want to, think about who's telling me that. But that's really, for me, I can go either way. So it's, am I willing to ask?
Yes, to question assumptions that went for years unquestioned. Noel?
This also follows from what Susie has said before a number of times that I found very helpful. I need to change my story. So my story can be a result of who told me what, and or a result of, well, I did this, therefore I got that. Also, to change my story means I have to be willing to look at the negative story, as you were saying, Jonica, bring it to the light and decide to change it. Another aspect of this is to ask myself, not why is this happening to me, or why has this happened, but what can I learn from this? And the learning may be on any level. Certainly it's to forgive myself for what I think I did to cause it, as well as to look at other mental, physical, spiritual causes and beliefs. I'm complete.
It's so true. To forgive myself for the pain I caused by repeating that story for a decade. And for me also, I attributed that story to someone else was the one that set it in motion. So I had resentment and guilt to forgive them for the messages that I then adopted for myself. Yeah, so it's eventually we realize we have to forgive the entire world. I mean, that's where we're going with this. It's a forgiveness of self. It's a forgiveness of close family members and friends. It's forgiveness of people in power who made choices that caused difficulty for many people. And then it extends to forgiving the entire world. But we don't have to do all that in one leap. That's more than anyone should be expected to make. I have to be careful what I'm saying here. Most people need more time to do that. I guess that's the fair way of saying that.
One other thing, if I may, I found that labeling the so-called illness, physical or mental or emotional, doesn't help, just seems to solidify the belief in the illness. So I'm sorry, Betsy, to criticize you, but the word chronic, see how you can reverse that somehow.
I heard something today, something about negativity is there to show you there's a warning and how to change that perception. So yes, thank you. No, I agree.
Very much so. Our labels, our language form the basis for the way we regard ourselves in life, and they begin to change as well. As a matter of fact, that's one of the signs for everyone here is the words you use to describe your life and life itself begin to shift. They're no longer adequate to describe the power and faith that we have for spirit to guide us. So we change our words, we change our language. All right, let's go on. I think we're on this paragraph.
When a brother is sick, it is because he is not asking for peace, and therefore does not know he has it. The acceptance of peace is the denial of illusion, and sickness is an illusion. Yet every son of God has the power to deny illusions anywhere in the kingdom, merely by denying them completely in himself. I can heal you because I know you. I know your value for you, and it is this value that makes you whole. A whole mind is not idolatrous and does not know of conflicting laws. I will heal you merely because I have only one message, and it is true. Your faith in it will make you whole when you have faith in me.
Two ideas here I want to point out. One is a universal truth of how we correct false beliefs. It always involves two phases. One is the acceptance of peace or the acceptance of the truth, the answer, and the other is the denial of illusion. So we cannot in order to remove obstacles to peace, we must say no to illusions, reject the messages of ego. But that's not enough to heal, to simply say no to a lie. One must, but that is required to stop the damage, say to have a boundary against false messages. That is required, but it's not sufficient. In order to heal, we must also accept the gifts from spirit, the acceptance of peace, the acceptance of correction, the acceptance of light. Always are those the two phases in existence. And you can think of it as an exchange. This is the easiest way, I think, to understand it. You're exchanging a lie for the truth, an illusion for reality. You're willingly letting go of one and accepting another in its place. And in the context of what we're reading today, where the ego is attacking us, it does not want you to know your true self, so it attacks a false self-image. Well, that's what we need to say no to. Noel, I think it was talking about changing our story. Whatever self-talk messages that been ego, where the ego had control over, of saying no to those and exchanging it. Now, here's a spiritual concept. I can heal you because I know you. I know your value for you. So the exchange is to say that spirit sees you correctly. Spirit knows your value. And we have been confused about our value. So we say no to the old story, the old messages, and now accept that by faith and trust that spirit values us. Spirit knows what we are. So it is an exchange of self-concepts. And you can be sure that you can trust spirit to know you truly. Susie?
Yeah, this is one of the most beautiful paragraphs I think I've read again, because it's so experiential. I mean, when I was sick, I was not asking for peace, and therefore I couldn't find it. I was asking for all kinds of things from my ego because I was so identified with my story, which is completely false, I know now. So I stayed sick because I did pray, but I prayed through my ego. And I prayed for different things, and I prayed for this or that, or all the things we talk about. And I have experienced so much healing over, I've shared this over things I never thought could have been healed, because I changed my thinking started changing because of the workbook lessons over and over and over and over again. And now I know how to pray, and that I only want the peace of God. I only want what the Holy Spirit has to offer me, because nothing else brings me everlasting peace. It's very temporary. So this sentence, when a brother is sick, it is because he is not asking for peace. And it's really simple. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Once I accepted all of this, it actually becomes easy. It's a struggle to pray through the ego. It's not a struggle to be united with the Holy Spirit. So that's how I can put it, that's how it's been for me. And when I'm struggling in any way, I can feel it, and I know that's a sign I'm identifying with my ego.
Good catch. Very good. Number 8.
I do not bring God's message with deception. And you will learn this as you learn that you always receive as much as you accept. You could accept peace now for everyone and offer them perfect freedom from all illusions because you heard his voice. But have no other gods before him, or you will not hear. God is not jealous of the gods you make, but you are. You would save them and serve them because you believe that they made you. You think they are your father because you are projecting onto them the fearful fact that you made them to replace God. Yet when they seem to speak to you, remember that nothing can replace God, and whatever replacements you have attempted are nothing.
So we need to clarify something here that is going to come up again in the next few paragraphs as well. So we're going to use two terms for father, one with a small f, which is an illusion of your source, and one is with a capital F, which we will take to be the truth of the creator is our father context. And so in confusion, we think that our idols, our little gods, are our father. So, and this can be viewed as your story. You think that the narrative of your life, viewed through pain and suffering, has birthed you, is your source. It's an illusion of an idol as your substitute for God. And in truth, all egos believe this. This is not true just of some. All egos believe that illusions of your own making are your reality, are your source, are the cause of your condition. And so it is part of the religion of the ego to believe that these gods are your father. And this is a profound insight that I've not found anywhere else beyond the Course in Miracles, about believing so much in your own story that you believe it's the cause of your reality. Betsy?
What does it mean by the gods of your own making?
So I'll cite a
ego?
few. Go ahead.
Is that ego?
Yes.
Is that the material world?
Yes. Yeah, so it has many forms, Betsy. I'll recite a few of them. I'm not saying you or I engage in all of them, but we can notice that people do. So people can make money into a god, excessive wealth. We can make intoxicants into a god. And that's the whole range of things you can take to give a buzz. Some people can make sports into a god where you live and breathe all day long. You worship athletic competition, preoccupied. It's your number one motive for life. You can make another person into your god. And it goes on and on and on. It's not the purpose here to list them all out.
I get it.
Right. And so it becomes the premier, this state of confusion becomes the premier motivating factor in one's life. As Noel would say, it's part of your story. If somebody says, "Who are you?" you say, "Oh, I'm a basketball player." And I'm not picking on basketball, but I mean, so identified with a sporting event that that's your premier emphasis of yourself. And there are, by the way, those things which are not generally destructive, and there are other extremes that are very destructive. So it's on a range. All of them become confusions about self. Yeah. Okay. So question becomes, so, this section is a lot on the illness. But it's right to say, well, how do we heal from this? I mean, that is our goal here. Well, it says here, you could accept peace now. David, this is truly transpersonal. You could accept peace now for everyone. Oh, I didn't know I had that connection. And offer them perfect freedom from all illusions. But what's the condition, the prerequisite of that is because you heard his voice and have no other gods before you. So the condition of accepting peace for everyone and hearing his voice is that one not be worshiping false idols. Noel?
I find very inspirational the story of Jesus' healing of the cripple at the pool of Bethesda. He went to the man and he did not accept the story of 38 years of being crippled, or that he would have to wait for somebody else to put him into the pool. He went right over and he said, "Take up your mat and walk." He eradicated the whole story and saw only the man's perfection. And I think he's saying here, we can offer anyone similarly perfect freedom from whatever illusions they have or we see they have.
Yeah, and this goes right back to, well, it ties into a lot of things, Noel, including the study that you cited earlier, which there's variations around the study, but one of them was before the school year began, they told the teacher who the ace students were in class. They gave them the names of the high IQ students ahead of time. And lo and behold, by the end of the semester, those high IQ students had A's or straight A's. It was self-fulfilling prophecy, as you said. But what they didn't tell the teacher is that we're misleading you as to who the high IQ students are, who the top students are. They were randomly selected from the list of students, but the teacher believed in them and conveyed to these students that they were capable of academic success. And lo and behold, they were successful. So these are laws of mind, which are not generally that we weren't taught about until now. And it includes the fact that you can accept peace for others by believing in them. But to do so, you cannot be splitting your own mind between the true God and your own false gods.
Another aspect of that quickly is that not to prejudge, because the teachers didn't know the previous grades of the students, they could not prejudge how the students were going to perform. And like in the pool of Bethesda too, Jesus didn't prejudge that man. Oh, good heavens, 38 years, how the hell am I going to do this? So that, to me, that's a hard one, because judgment is often a reaction, an immediate reaction, and I need to watch out for that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from the ego's point of view, that's a hard one. From the Holy Spirit's point of view, there's no order of difficulty in miracles. It transcends the laws of time and space. All right, we're going to go on.
Very simply then, You may believe you are afraid of nothingness, but you are really afraid of nothing. And in that awareness, you are healed. You will hear the God you listen to. You made the God of sickness, and by making him, you made yourself able to hear him. Yet you did not create him, because he is not the will of the Father. He is therefore not eternal and will be unmade for you the instant you signify your willingness to accept only the eternal.
Mhm. So all of what we're talking about, the God of sickness, is the grand delusion. It's the grand fraud that, and it continues to occupy attention only because we believe in it. And when we shift our awareness to the creator as source, it quickly undoes. This is the exchange of the God of sickness for the God of health and the God of truth. Quickly, the God of sickness vanishes because we no longer invest the power of our mind in it. It says it will be unmade for you the instant you signify your willingness to accept only the eternal. This last line, however, there's more involved in this. The words come easy, but your willingness to accept only the eternal is means that your mind's not splitting itself between accepting mostly the eternal, but also investing a bit in the temporal illusions of time. So this is a total commitment, a willingness to accept only the eternal. We would call this the upper stages of the ladder towards the light, where one is walking in grace and preparing for the final judgment and total freedom and release. All right, we're going to go on.
If God has but one Son, there is but one God. You share reality with him because reality is not divided. To accept other gods before him is to place other images before yourself. You do not realize how much you listen to your gods and how vigilant you are on their behalf. Yet they exist only because you honor them. Place honor where it is due, and peace will be yours. It is your inheritance from your real Father. You cannot make your Father, and the Father you made did not make you. Honor is not due to illusions, for to honor them is to honor nothing. Yet fear is not due them either, for nothing cannot be fearful. You have chosen to fear love because of its perfect harmlessness, and because of this fear, you have been willing to give up your own perfect helpfulness and your own perfect help.
Well, a lot of things here. I think this is really the essence of what we're talking about here. What do you invest yourself in? What do you give honor to? And in our confusion, we gave honor to illusions. We gave honor to judgments of the ego. And as a result, they seemed real to us because the power of our mind is such that it can create our own reality for us. So it's a matter of changing our mind. And so I want to come back to a question that Susie brought up earlier about empathy. Although I want to use a different example. Let's say you have a son, 17 years old, that breaks up with the first love of his life. So they've just broken up, and the son believes my life is over. My life is no longer worth living. 17 years old, first love, brokenhearted, believes that his life is over. Clearly, you would not want to honor his illusion. You would not want to get in there and feel his feelings of life is over, but recognize that he's fragile and brokenhearted, but also that he'll get over this and that he will love others again, and actually in the long run may learn a lot from this experience, but he might not be ready to hear it right now. And so a healer recognizes healthy boundaries in consoling someone who's feeling loss, recognizes both the truth that this too shall pass, but also recognizes that that's not words that the person may be ready to hear right now, but doesn't go so far as to honor the illusion. For to honor illusions is to honor nothing. And so we're just making illusions real if we honor them. And so to the healer, more is expected. It's the recognition of all these aspects. And we should say that while we can talk about it, thanks to the Course of Miracles, we can talk about how the mechanics of this work. In the moment when you're with someone, Holy Spirit's the one who's got it all together and who realizes what would be most appropriate for that moment. And so it really brings us back to not thinking we have answers, but to listening for answers and guidance from Spirit. Sandra?
One of the things that I've noticed in humanity that we've made into gods, and I hate to belabor this, is the medical profession and big pharma. I'm complete.
Anything can be made into gods. And so I'll add two more to that. Rock climbing is for some people now their primary passion. That's what they live for. And I've noticed people can make automobiles their god, like whether it be collector items or modern, it goes on. And our purpose here is to recognize a general principle of making things, temporal things of this world into gods, and realize that it has many forms that it can be applied to. Some people make clothing into a god to be ultra fashionable all the time. And, so it just goes on and on and on. And it's not to criticize the use of automobiles or clothing or any of those things. It's when they get elevated in our mind to a level that in excess. This is our final paragraph.
Only at the altar of God will you find peace. And this altar is in you because God put it there. His voice still calls you to return, and he will be heard when you place no other gods before him. You can give up the god of sickness for your brothers. In fact, you would have to do so if you give him up for yourself. For if you see the god of sickness anywhere, you have accepted him. And if you accept him, you will bow down and worship him, because he was made as God's replacement. He is the belief that you can choose which God is real. Although it is clear that this has nothing to do with reality, it is equally clear that it has everything to do with reality as you perceive it.
And so this is really powerful here. We said a few paragraphs back that you can accept peace now for everyone and offer them perfect freedom from illusions because you hear the voice. And so you can give up the God of sickness on behalf of or for your brothers, but you have to do so by giving up the God of sickness for yourself. It's the condition. You can't retain. So this is where how many, well, maybe it's a little late in the day to go over the statement, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear? Or is it when the teacher is ready, the students will appear? So I've just reversed the common statement. And so, is it depend on the student for healing to begin, or does it depend on the teacher for healing to be set in motion? Well, you can only help others if you have already received and given up the God of sickness for yourself. Because how can any teacher, how can anyone who's accepted the God of sickness for themselves help another to give up the God of sickness? And so it brings us back to where this paragraph begins. It's only at the altar of God that you can find peace and healing and truth, encounter your true self. The Spirit already holds your true self in the light, and there is a place within you, deep within, called the altar, where you can encounter the light of your true self. That's where your peace will be found. Your experience of that moment, that relationship, is the source of our peace. And I was trying to tie it to the last sentence here. Although it is clear that illusions have nothing to do with reality, is it equally clear that that it has everything to do with reality as you perceive it? I get that all mixed up. Sorry. Help me out here.
Well, I think it's lesson 133. I will not value the valueless. I think there's a lot to be said about that. So, because that to me ties in with only at the altar of God will I find peace. But if I'm valuing the valueless, I am again identifying with all my idols and the small f Father and all of that stuff that this is all said. So I'm enabling, like I said, my ego. And if I only value the peace of God, and if I only want the peace of God, that's kind of what I think lesson 133 really ties into this.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Susie. Thank you. Yes, we need to be willing to let go of all obstacles in order to see clearly. Well, that's as far as we're.
Our will determines our perception. So it's the will. I have to will with God.
Yes.
I have a comment, if I may.
Sure. Go ahead.
I have two comments. One is about comments about who thinks they're God or who thinks they're not God, and this, that, and the other thing. And we confuse, that's level confusion when we talk about anybody being God or any profession or any kind of anything in the physical world here on this earth. Because in truth, we are all one, and we are all striving for the same goal of peace and joy and happiness. And the rest is illusion. And I want to comment on what began the whole lesson today when you talked about your experience with your father and how that impacted you. And I want to talk about when I was a teenager. You know, I was an unruly teenager. I certainly was. And my mother used to say to me, "You can't be trusted with anything. You can't be trusted with anything." And through my recovery in life, I became an eye surgeon. And at some point, my mother needed eye surgery. And I was the physician, the surgeon that performed the eye surgery on her. And when my mother lied down on the table and put her head in the placement where you sit for eye surgery, I knew all had been forgiven. And that she had said, in essence, I can be trusted with anything. That's a whole recovery process. It's a beautiful story.
It is. Indeed. Thank you, David, for sharing that. And it's amazing how those judgments initially can direct years and years of our life. And then when they're undone, it's like it's gone. It's like that chapter is over and now we're free of it. It's really beautiful. And I'm sure each person has their own story here because all of us have taken in messages at usually at a very young age, although you can take it in at any age. And then those messages were stored away and remained unchallenged for years and years and became weapons that we repeated against our own self. And so the God of sickness has no power in itself once we let it go and are willing to heal. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you all for being here and being willing to shed a light on this, this error in understanding who we are. We'll continue again tomorrow and on Monday. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thanks.
Amazing.
Namaste, everybody.
Love you all.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for that. Very moving and wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Peace and love.
Bye, everyone.
Forgiveness heals everything. That's from the Course.
That was